I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what, and he didn't think anything was wrong. Sort the beads in. Put the beads in there, into the box, the orange ones. This morning, he didn't know who I was. He doesn't think he's ever been married. Are you married, Bob?
No.
No.
How would you describe your relationship?
Parent-child. Yeah, like a toddler. Which is your favorite color, Bob? There's loss every day. Inability to undo a belt, or using a Jenga block instead of a fork. Different words, loss of words. There's always something.
In your mind's eye, have you imagined what it will be like next year?
I don't think there'll be a next year. I think we're reaching or going quite quickly towards the end of this part of our life.
What happens to us when we lose our memories? How does this disconnect us to our ever-present moments of joy, fear, happiness, sadness, desire?
We know that people are afraid of this disease, and as we get older, more people are wondering, am I at risk for getting Alzheimer's disease? Do I even have the beginning stages of Alzheimer's disease? It's important to say that as we age, we all will experience some changes in our memory performance, our thinking skills, the rapidity with which we can accomplish complex cognitive tasks. But that's a little different from what we might consider an abnormal memory change. If you need a list when you go to the grocery store and you used to just keep everything in your mind, that's pretty normal. But if people are telling you, or if you're experiencing a loved one who's asking the same question over and over again in a single conversation, that may be a sign that there's something wrong.
The statistics in this country are alarming. Someone develops Alzheimer's disease every 66 seconds. More than 6 million individuals in the U.S. are living with Alzheimer's, and this number is projected to reach 14 million by 2050. Costs associated with caring for Alzheimer patients are estimated to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. California in particular has more people with this end-of-life disease than any other state. A recent report by the California Department of Public Health suggests that the number of Orange County residents with Alzheimer's will more than double by 2040. This increase will be even more dramatic among the state's Asian and Latino population. Even more alarming, some researchers believe Orange County may soon become an epicenter of people suffering from Alzheimer's disease.
We know that age is the key variable in this equation. And because it's such a great place to spend our retirement years, and because Orange County has so many people older on the spectrum of age, we know that Alzheimer's disease is already a major problem in Orange County, and the magnitude of the problem is only going to grow.
Joshua Grill is director of UCI Mind, an Alzheimer's disease research center funded in part by the National Institute on Aging, part of the National Institutes of Health, as well as by private donors.
So the burden on our local systems, the number of people who need support, who need Meals on Wheels, who need social services, who need medical attention, diagnoses, treatment, care, all of this is going to only increase over the coming decades.
Alzheimer's is a nuanced disease that travels between and through multiple layers of behaviors, moods, and memories. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration describes it as an irreversible, progressive brain disorder that slowly destroys memory and thinking skills, and eventually the ability to carry out simple tasks. And while the specific causes are not fully known, it is a disease that over time ravages the brain's neural connections through the buildup of amyloid plaques, erasing a person's memories and basic cognitive skills.
I think for the people who haven't had their lives touched by Alzheimer's disease, they probably don't understand what it means to endure this plight, to have a family member or to go through this disease yourself. It's a long haul. It is associated with tremendous burden. It's difficult. It's difficult for the individual. It's difficult for their families. It creates tremendous challenges. And we probably don't do a good enough job as a society, as a medical practice, of supporting people in the throes of this disease.
One of UCI Mind's primary goals is to understand the causes leading to the neurological disorder. Not necessarily find a cure, but develop preventive solutions that might boost the brain's brakes to beat memory loss. To get there, though, takes time and resources.
If we can find treatments that push the disease off, delay it by 5 or 10 years, we actually dramatically would reduce the number of people afflicted with Alzheimer's disease. And the knowledge that we've gained over recent decades, the understanding that the disease begins many, many years before the memory problems begin, the understanding of what's happening in the brain during that window of time, and the development of treatments to try to counteract those biological changes may position us to do just that.
There are currently several drugs in that same classification that are in either the last phases of clinical trials or about to go before the FDA for approval. As of February of 2022, there are 104 disease-modifying treatments being evaluated in clinical trials or at various stages of regulatory approval, and these are potential new therapies.
One of the misconceptions about Alzheimer's is that it's an old person's disease, that only aging parents and grandparents get it. In fact, there's a subset of people who suffer from what's called early onset Alzheimer's. They start showing symptoms much earlier in life. Lindsay Hosfield is a project scientist at UCI where she studies the immune system and one particular type of immune cell in the brain and how it plays a role in Alzheimer's disease. Her father was diagnosed when he was only 49 years old. She was 18 at the time.
Alzheimer's strips you of your ability to remember, not just things, but people and who you are. At the end, my dad didn't know that he had been a dentist. He didn't know that he had 4 children. He didn't know that he had had a wife. It kind of reduces you to a very basic level of existence.
Clinicians in the field classify diagnosis under the age of 65 as early onset Alzheimer's.
Early onset Alzheimer's actually tends to be a little bit more aggressive and progress significantly quicker than late onset. So he lost his ability to speak, and then he actually passed away within 5 years, which is quite soon as well. And what's really unique about this population is because of that hereditary component, researchers know that somebody will get Alzheimer's 20, 30 years before they actually get diagnosed. So they're actually really ideal candidates for research participation because you can give these patients that you know are going to develop the disease, terrible as that is, you have a really unique opportunity to try to intervene as early as possible.
Last year, she and her family members founded the nonprofit Youngtimers to assist the early onset Alzheimer's disease community. Youngtimers has monthly virtual support meetings for caregivers, for individuals who are at risk of developing the disease, and for people who already have symptoms.
So if you wanted to know whether or not you carry a mutation, you can do that. There's so many nuances about making that decision, and there's so many different moving parts and variables to think about. financial planning, family planning. If you want to participate in research, can you live with that knowledge? Do you have hope by not knowing?
Keith Swain's leadership in the Alzheimer's community is significant. His wife Judy passed in November of 2014 after a prolonged battle with the disease. From that day forward, he made it his mission to do what he could to help find treatments for others.
At the end of Judy's life, she couldn't speak. She was immobile. I'm not sure that she could recognize me. There was a sense that emotionally I felt like maybe she connected, but I don't think it was that she knew that I was her husband. And certainly all those things, the drive, the determination, the independence, that was all gone. We'd been married over 40 years when the disease started, and always been each other's best friend and companions and supporters. And having to show her pictures of us when we were younger and older or in between to try to convince her that I was in fact Keith. You recognize it's a disease, but it's still hard to swallow. The hardest day in my life was not the day Judy died, but the day that she went into residential care, because I knew she was never going to come home from that. And I knew there was a one-way street. She was going to die.
Without the support of the Keith and Judy Swain Family Foundation Fund and other philanthropists, UCI Mind and other organizations might not be as far along in their research for a treatment to Alzheimer's.
We don't know, are we going to get it when we're 80, or are we going to get it when we're 60, or are we going to get it when we're 45? We'd better do the research to make sure we don't have to worry about that any longer, because it's a devastating disease.
All this aside, the statistics, the research, the potential one day for a preventive solution, the toll that Alzheimer takes on the lives of those afflicted and their loved ones is devastating and incalculable.
We met in 1965 in Newport, Rhode Island, surfing, of all things to be doing in New England. We didn't date, we were just friends. Harry went off to the Vietnam War for almost 3 years, and when he came back, I happened to stop at his mother's house to say hello, and she said, "Harry's coming home today." That started it. We dated for maybe 6 months, and then we eloped. And then a year later came to San Diego because it was too cold to surf in Rhode Island. It would be around 2003 in the middle of the night. I tried to wake Harry. I gently nudged him with my foot, with my hand. He didn't respond. And I remember being on my knees in the dark on the bed, shaking him and screaming his name. "Wake up, wake up." And my mind was saying, he's dead, he's dead. And after a bit of time, he came around. The doctors never knew what happened to him that night, but that's the marker for us of when things started to subtly change in our lives. Minor things to begin with. Losing the keys, losing the credit cards.
I knew I was having a harder time finding things at work. I'd put something down, but I couldn't find it. And it freaked me out a bit, to say the least. But I didn't really complain about it because I figured, well, hey, you're getting old. But it was progressing. And Karen finally made me realize we got to do something.
Harry was diagnosed with posterior cortical atrophy. It's an uncommon form of Alzheimer's that causes blindness. He is totally blind on the right side of each eyeball. And what he sees on the left side of each eyeball, he describes as looking like a kaleidoscope.
You can't taste Alzheimer's. You can't, all these things that senses can pick up. You don't feel it, so you're not really alarmed. And that's the importance of early diagnosis.
Some people, like Deborah Levy, Executive Director for the Alzheiers Association, Orange County chapter, argue that it's not just all about funding research for preventive solutions or possible one day a cure, but that people with Alzheimer's and other types of dementia also need various rehabilitation and assistance and caregiving that can improve quality of life and help maintain a sense of purpose and hope.
What really hurts my heart is when I hear that somebody has gone through caring for a loved one with this disease and didn't know that we were a resource in the community.
The Alzheimer's Association is the world's third largest funder of Alzheimer's disease research, behind the United States and Chinese governments. It is also a voluntary organization that provides support, research, and advocacy through various programs, including care consultations, support groups, and education programs.
It impacts individuals usually for long periods of time once you're diagnosed. It's expensive for the family because oftentimes a caregiver has to give up work or cut down on their hours in order to care for somebody living with the disease. And the Alzheimer's Association and our volunteer advocates are spending quite a bit of time, both at the state level and the federal level, trying to get additional funding for resources available, whether it's assistance to families, whether it's additional funding for research through the NIH or NIA.
Alzheimer's is a costly disease, especially for families and caretakers. Consider roughly 83% of the help provided to older adults with Alzheimer's in the U.S. comes from family members, friends, and unpaid caregivers. The total lifetime cost of care for someone with Alzheimer's is estimated at more than $350,000. The total national cost of caring for people living with Alzheimer's and other dementias is projected to reach $321 billion and does not include roughly the $350,000 in unpaid caregiving by family and friends. Ryan Hong, 19, is a student at UCLA.
My grandfather began experiencing symptoms, according to my mom, back in 1996, even before I was alive. And he was officially diagnosed in 2000, so quite a while ago, actually. By the time he came to us, he was actually in the terminal stage of Alzheimer's. So he was very weak, he was thin, he was not able to recognize us, he was bedridden. It was very difficult to see. But our family decided, we wanted to keep him alive. So we kind of struggled through it, and we kept him alive for another, I believe, 4 years. But my mom would tell me stories like he would be driving and get lost. I remember coming to my mom's house and having the entire windows and entire mirrors just covered up in newspaper. I wasn't entirely sure what the reason for that was until I asked my mom, and she had to explain to me that they had put up those newspaper clippings and those magazine articles to cover up the mirrors so he wouldn't see his reflection in the mirror and get angry at himself in the mirror. That was just mind-blowing to see, because it was how can you see a reflection of yourself and get angry at the reflection of yourself in the mirror? That made no sense to me, and it was just crazy and honestly devastating to hear about.
If indeed Orange County may soon become the epicenter of a new pandemic, placing huge financial and infrastructure burdens on local healthcare systems and social services, what, if anything, can state government do to curb the pandemic? In 2021, California Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order calling for the creation of a master plan on aging that outlines goals and strategies that include heighten public awareness through public education campaigns, promote consumer access to reliable information, continue to sustain and expand existing research, and create a coordinated state infrastructure that enhances delivery of high-quality coordinated care. Josh Grill suggests that all Californians can help prepare for the state of a silver tsunami of new diagnoses by 1. Donating for research and various types of rehabilitation caregiving services. 2. By advocating to local, state, and federal representatives. And 3. By participating in clinical trials for new promising treatments. Beyond this, he recommends that Alzheimer patients and their families stay away from gadget treatments and pseudo-medicines that do nothing but peddle false hope.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of misconceptions about Alzheimer's disease. There's no good treatment for Alzheimer's disease yet. We have some treatments, they're helpful, but we don't have cures, we don't have miracles, and there are people out there who are offering, peddling hope and unproven cures, untested therapies, and charging a lot of money that few families can actually afford.
In the meantime, the 6 million individuals in the U.S. who are living with Alzheimer's disease, people like Karen and Harry, Les and Rob, will continue along with their daily lives, struggling to maintain that precarious balance between despair and hope.
We were surrounded by friends and family, and it was like paying homage to the life that we had and the life that we built together. And it was just spectacular, and Rob was completely there and completely invested and emotional, and it was beautiful. It was just, I will never forget that day. It's been a long journey. It's not all pretty and lovey-dovey, but you know, when I renewed those vows, I made a recommitment to walk him home with grace and dignity. So that's what I'll do as best as I can.
And research is going to be the way to find the cure and the intervention. But it's not going to happen immediately. It's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take support of the government through funding, and it's going to take philanthropic support. And I think the reality is now there's more of that than there was 20 years ago. There's less stigma associated with Alzheimer's. There's more of a willingness to talk about Alzheimer's. And there's more money flowing into research. So that's really what gives me hope for the future.
What's really exciting is that they're running clinical trials in early onset familial Alzheimer's disease individuals. And over the last couple of years, we've realized that there actually are drugs that can halt parts of the disease from continuing. I have extreme hope that I think in the next couple of years, we really will see some promising results from some of these clinical trials.
Early diagnosis would have been a great advantage to us. And I hope people understand it's not a normal part of aging. But if we could get the word out that we need more research, that maybe the next generation won't face the same challenge that we're facing.
Hope is critical. Research is about hope. We are hopeful, we're optimistic about the progress we're making. We're going to change clinical practice for Alzheimer's disease in the coming years.
There is hope for those living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. We just had the first drug that is going to slow the progression of the disease approved by the FDA, and there are several more that are in the pipeline. We are currently funding research both locally and globally to slow the progression of this disease, to help us understand what causes this disease. We're going to continue advocating for additional funding and resources for families whose loved ones are impacted by this deadly disease.
I think the one gift we've been given is time time to adjust and time to take over the reins, so to speak. So I know we're going to be okay, the kids and I. I don't want to be without him, but I know we'll be okay at that time. Hope is hard, because I see it's just gonna get worse from here, you know. I don't, my hope is that I can keep him home and that we can manage like that. That's my hope. Can you hear something? Can you hear something?
Yeah.
What do you hear?
Like Formula One.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
What's that?
What's this one?
This one.
What do you hear? What's that?
Yeah, it's coming in.
Ah, good. That's a Lamborghini.
And if I can, I'll tell you one funny story out of that. We were sitting on the couch watching television one evening, and Judy turned to me and said, "I'm afraid you're going to have to leave now. My husband will be home shortly." So I got up, walked out to the garage, waited a few minutes, came back in and said, "Hi, Jude, I'm home." And she was quite content. So I concluded that one of the advantages of Alzheimer's is you can be both the boyfriend and the husband. So I don't know if that's an advantage, but it was. So, I mean, you have to find humor somewhere, even in the most dire situations.
People are rarely surprised to hear that music holds an incredible and innate power over the brain. We process music differently than we process other sounds, and maybe we can harness that power for good. Maybe we can use music as a medicine. Maybe it can alleviate depression or anxiety, or maybe even some of the harder symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, like agitation and aggression or delusions. I'd love to do the study to show the benefits of music in people with mild to moderate or moderate to severe Alzheimer's disease. But should we really need that study to engage the ones we loved in the music that they loved from younger years?